What's up, everybody? You know what time it is? It is time for Monday's Middle Earth, which means we're going to be doing a reading from The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, as we continue our journey. What's up, Luke? Am I talking? And you're Twitter pated? Why is he talking? I thought I was taking a nap. It is nap time where we live. But I got to do this before the nap, so he's going to do his pre nap bathing, see if his sister shows up, and we're going to get into Chapter 2, The Passage of the Marshes, which is from Book 4 in The Lord of the Rings, or the second part of The Two Towers. If this is your first time tuning in, Mondays in Middle Earth is the series where I've been rereading The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion for the first time in 20 years, reacquainting myself with some things, learning things I didn't know before, investigating things on the internet because that tool didn't exist when I was a kid, and generally increasing our knowledge and enhancing our understanding of Tolkien so that we can properly critique the Rings of Power and other shows that are going to come out now that the Embracer Group has purchased the entirety of the Tolkien IP from Middle Earth Enterprises. It's going to be a fun time ahead, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't already done so, make sure to check out the previous episodes in this series. But for now, let's dive in. Don't forget, we go live every Monday at 11 a.m. Central Time here on YouTube. So youtube.com/. Renfail. Like, follow, subscribe, all those good things, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get into the reading. At the very beginning of this chapter, we see Gollum leading Frodo and Sam, and he doesn't appear to have any thought towards escaping, or at the very least, the text says he seems to have no thoughts of escaping, which leads us as the reader to wonder whether this is him just being tricksy, or is he actually doing this out of self-preservation? There's the other side of this too, which is he could be doing it from the goodness of his heart, because there is still a part of Smeagol tucked away in the interior. Now, if we've already read this, there's some foreshadowing here, because we ultimately know what Frodo and Gollum sort of devolve towards over the course of this relationship. But this is a great first entry into what's going on. Of course, Sam is very suspicious of everything that's going on right now. Um, we also get a sense of who Smeagol was before he converted into the creature he has now become. When he's leading through these gullies and down towards the swamps, they eventually come to a shallow, stony stream, and it says he splashes around in the water, chuckling to himself and croaking in a sort of song. And then we get an actual song which has a bunch of lyrics to it, which eventually terminate when to catch a fish so juicy sweet, which is the line that they've used from the films, of course. Um, but as they're talking about this, he pauses midway through the song when he says, I wish for, and then he stops and says, What does he wish for? Ah, he guessed it long ago. Baggins did. Baggins guessed it. And it says, A glint comes into his eyes, and Sam, catching the gleam in the darkness, thought it far from pleasant. So we're definitely getting a sense that while Smeagol is out for the first time in many years and enjoying this moment to sort of be himself, um, Gollum is still very much present and has a deep rooted hatred for all things Baggin because they stole it. Um, when they do stop to rest, Frodo offers Smeagol a little bit of food. And when he asks him if he's hungry, the text says Gollum's eyes suddenly seem to protrude further than ever from his sickly face, and they turn a greenish light. And this is Gollum coming forth and says, "We are so famished. What is it that they have? Do they have nice fishes?" And of course, they only have limbus bread, which they offer him, but he spits it out and says, "You're trying to choke me. This is you know horrible food. If I must starve, well, that's just my lot in life. Poor thin Smeagol starving to himself." Now, there's also this scene as they're getting ready to go to bed at night. It says that basically Smeagol goes off in the corner and whimpers to himself because he's so starved and he's so hungry. He doesn't have anything to eat. So he's literally just over in the corner whimpering to himself. This is the saddest creature you've ever seen. And I think this is one of Tolkien's best writing is the sections with Smeagol because we have masterful control of the dialogue here where the split personalities of Smeagol slash Gollum are coming out, where he's partly talking to himself, partly talking to Gollum, and partly talking to Frodo and Sam. And his mind is just so twisted from all those years of the ring and being alone that he sometimes has a difficulty in kind of bridging the gap between these different conversations. And this this split personality is written in such a way, it's just a brilliant stroke. If there was one part of the books where they were able to draw from for the films, for Peter Jackson's films, this would be it. Like they had so much great dialogue to choose from that allowed Andy Serkis to just hit it out of the park. Um, Now, as they come up to this point where they're going to take a rest, Sam is very nervous and he wants Frodo to only sleep for 2 hours, and they agree upon this. But Sam, of course, doesn't make it, and they sleep. And he realizes that 9 hours have passed. And when he wakes up, he's in a panic. He can't find Gollum, but Gollum is actually there, watching them. And he gets the friendly Smeagol who says, "Don't worry, I'll be back soon," because he's hungry. Frodo wakes up and he's explaining to Sam that he doesn't really worry. He's not worried about Gollum too much. He feels safe. Trusts him far more than Sam, but Sam is concerned about the fact that once they run out of food, he's worried that Gollum's going to want to eat them. And this is where things start to get a bit morbid because Frodo starts to talk about the fact that once they throw the One Ring into the fire, are they ever likely going to need bread again? It's a one-way trip, probably, more than likely. So we get a sense of where Frodo's mind is beginning to turn as they journey closer and closer to Mount Doom. Of course, the bulk of this chapter is obviously set around the Dead Marches, which in and of themselves are another great aspect of the Legendarium and the great history that Tolkien had written for himself around this series. And this is obviously the place of a great battle. Got corpses of men and elves and orcs all rotting away in the marshes, and there's this scene, where you could see them floating to the surface. It's a very dangerous place. But also, as they're traveling through here, you get the first time where they get this cry of a Nazgul overhead, and it says that Gollum is so petrified with fear that he can't move. He says he lays on the ground as if he had been stunned, and even though they roused him, he would not lift his face, but knelt forward on his elbows, covering the back of his head with his large flat hands, and he stayed that way until the moon was high in the sky. This little dude has been so traumatized by the Dark Lord and the torture at hands of his servants that just the mere thought of a Nazgul flying overhead sends him into a petrified horror. We also get a sense here Sam is beginning to sense the weariness that Frodo has as he watches on. He says his master looks like he's carrying the load of a weight which is ever increasing, and he says he dragged along slower and slower so that Sam often had to beg Gollum to wait and not leave him behind. At the same time, he's catching glimpses of Smeagol looking at Frodo, and when he does, the Gollum speech patterns emerge, and the way he looks at Frodo is like that of a predator looking at prey. But then we switch to Frodo's perspective, and we understand why this is happening because he's feeling the pressure of the great eye, constantly looking, constantly draining all hope, draining all life, under the constant pressure of the ring. This is also the chapter that we get the great debate between Gollum and Smeagol, which is portrayed in the film by Andy Serkis so brilliantly. Now, here in the book, Sam witnesses the debate, and he realizes at this moment that he'd been wrong about Gollum all along. Gollum's not hungry. That's not the concern here. He's not going to eat them. He realizes here that he's feeling the terrible call of the ring. So it's literally, it says in the text that Sam, for the first time, is realizing and beginning to understand the power the ring has over Gollum and the power it has over his master as well. But he does have the presence of mind to realize that he shouldn't reveal the fact that he had just witnessed this debate, so he pretends like he's just waking up, and Gollum's distracted from throttling Frodo in his sleep and stealing the ring. Um, we do eventually get to the point where there's a third Nazgul that flies overhead, and it says that Smeagol is so terrified that he won't move on until Frodo threatens him with his hand on the hilt of his sword. And the text says that Gollum rises with a snarl and went before them like a beaten dog, which is obviously foretelling of what's to come, because you can only push Smeagol so far before Gollum is going to come out to defend himself. And when it does, bad things are going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. Bad things are going to happen. Don't forget to like, subscribe, drop your comments down below, hit that bell icon. Let's talk about this chapter and more. Don't forget there's a Discord section in our server just for this discussion of these videos, so hopefully we'll see you there as well. Happy reading. Until next week.